Okay, so today I want to talk about how do you prioritize all of that stuff that you've got on the back burner in your business. You know, you get these quarterly meetings or the annual meeting, you're trying to put a big plan in place about what you're going to achieve for the next year, but you end up with a list that's 100 things long, and how on earth do you prioritize one thing over another? It's far too complex, and what typically happens in my business is you sort of end up cherry picking. Yeah, it's an educated guess, but is it the right thing to be done? And how do you make things relatively important to others? And here's a technique that I use that really helped to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is describe a very simple chart that we use for doing our project planning. Now, you can do this, as I'm going to describe now, for a company-wide meeting. So we did this at the beginning of the year to plan out what it is we're going to focus on over the next quarter. And it's also got on, everything else that was probably going to happen over the coming quarters and then the rest of the year as well. And this is basically, imagine having a blank sheet of paper, a square piece of paper, if you like, and you basically just split that up into 4 quarters. So you've got a line up and down the middle and a line going horizontal across. On the vertical, you have impact, and on the horizontal, you have effort. So it's an effort impact table. Now, this is not something that I have created myself, but it's something that I've never used in this way before for doing our company planning. And if you have and you found this useful, do comment and let me know. If there's not something you've heard of before, comment and let me know as well. That'd be really, really interesting. So here you've got up and down being high impact, left and right being effort. And so anything near the top of your piece of paper is going to have a big impact, or there's a high need for it. It's the other thing that we use when we were using this. So what's the impact of that being delivered? And also from an internal point of view, is there a really high need for it? Because it may be something that you just know you have to do. Like I promised I'm going to launch a course next week. I have to do that regardless of at the end of this exercise that I think it's going to be high impact or not. So if I had to decide, it would have really low impact. If I'd made the decision to launch that course after I'd done this, I might not have launched it. And that's not the case, by the way, if you're on the course I'm launching next week. I'm just using it as an example because it was on my screen at the top. So something high impact or high need, like you've just got to do it, even if it's even if the impact may be not so huge. And then from left to right, so anything on the far left of the page is low effort, so easy peasy, and on the right is like super difficult. You're gonna have to spend months or weeks or whatever doing that. And then it's really simple. You just do your brainstorm like you might do for a company meeting. Put all your post-it notes on. You can do this on a big whiteboard in front of your team if you've got a team, or you can do it on a virtual whiteboard like I do using Lucidchart. And then you basically brainstorm everything, and you just start sticking the stickies on wherever you think. And at the beginning, it's just arbitrary. It's like almost just putting them down. Is it a big impact? Is it hard? Is it easy? But the more you put on, the more you have to start moving them around. Because you'll put on something, and you'll be like, so for example, we are going to start using a social media broadcasting tool, and one called Story Chief, and we've had it for a while. We just never actually got around to switching on. So that's one of the targets for this quarter. So that goes on the board. But then we have a plan for our podcast content going forward. So where does that go? Is that more important or less important than getting our publishing more efficient and out onto more channels using Story Chief? So therefore you put it relative to what's already on the board. But then you put something else on. So for example, I'm creating a course about flowcharts and using process mapping. So based on my opinion and the opinion of anyone else in the meeting, is that more or less important and impactful than those two things that are already on there? Because depending on how big your team is, it may be that you only have a few people, and therefore everything that goes on here is going to affect your whole team. Or maybe you have, if you are a bigger company, you have other teams, then maybe you could break this up into departmental brainstorms and prioritization. But for me, my team's pretty small. So any project that we undertake will really affect or have an impact on the whole team's workload in some way or another. So I've decided to put everything on this one diagram. And so you've now, as you put more and more post-it notes onto this, it becomes busier and busier and a bit more difficult to know where to slot things in and move things around. This is so important. You don't do this on a piece of paper. It's got to be on something that you can edit and move them around. And that's why I like a digital version, because it's just super quick and easy to do. And we color code them as well for departments. We've got blue things is for marketing, we've got red things for sales, we've got brown things for products, and we've got operations, and we've got HR. And so therefore very easy we can see on the whole diagram, sort of where all of the work is that we want to get done over the next few months, and how important it is relative to other work, and how much easier or harder it is relative to other work. So remember, the vertical is how hard it is. You just literally, as you put something on, you look at what's already on there on a vertical line, and where does it fit in on how high impact it's going to have. Where does it fit in relative to everything else on the vertical? And then when you decide the level on the vertical, you then go, okay, well, how easy is it compared to everything else on the horizontal, and then put it on. So you just pick up a card and then look at what's already there, and you might have to move some things around to make it work. And that's it. And I tell you, it was one of the most useful and productive meetings I've ever had. And it was a meeting with myself. I just basically brainstormed, sat here. It was actually when I had COVID, and I was sat here bored out of my head, and I was just like, right, okay, so I'm just going to do something useful. And I just sat down for a couple of hours and just dumped my brain, and this just basically made sense. And lists went out the window, and checklists and all the rest of it. Now, this visual way of prioritization, both in terms of effort and impact, and in terms of both effort and impact, is just really, really cool. And there's one other thing that I've actually done since then. And that was I was showing one of my mastermind groups this and explaining it, and we were talking about it, and suddenly it dawned on me as well, without even realizing it, as I was putting on the different departmental things. So for example, sales, or lead gen, or authority building for sort of marketing and sales based things, or the HR operations, I sort of automatically weighted them depending on the color. Not because of the colour, but because of what they represented. So the sales automatically got a higher weighting in terms of impact than some of the other stuff. And so therefore I decided to, actually on the side of my diagram, I've ordered from top to bottom the most high important, generally speaking. So with regards to like departments or topics, whatever, we've coloured those things. So we've got sales, lead gen, authority, strategy and systems. That's all in marketing. They've got HR operations and products. And then they're actually in the list of order of the highest impact, and therefore the highest weight in which they're going to get. And that made it easier for me to actually just decide against where they should fall, because I'll be actually weighting them in the same way each time as well. So that's it. That's how we've basically just stopped having these long lists of things we can and possibly do or could possibly do over the coming quarter, picking out a few and then sort of focusing on them, to now having a real easy to look at visual strategy. And when we come up with a new idea, we just slot it into wherever we think on the whole diagram. And what we've done is extracted those things from the top left-hand corner. I should say, what do you do this at the end of it? You extract the things from the top left-hand corner, generally speaking, because they are lower effort, highest impact. But also some of the stuff with high impact that may even be a bit more effort, may be more valuable to you because of the impact. So you have to make a subjective judgment at the end of the day. There's nothing written in stone about this. It's not a scientific method, but it's just a really useful one. So I hope you found that useful as I did, and love to hear your comments on if you use this and what you think of it. Cool.